Hi again, everybody. Okay, this is just a brief follow-up on the iron ore refining. Okay, what I got going on right here at this moment is I'm just boiling down the concentrates, concentrating down the solution. I don't know if you can see it moving it. I'm not for sure what exactly, if it's the airflow, but you'll see it move and twitch a little bit. Part of that could be boiling, part of that could be evaporative, crystallization, anything like that. Looks really cool to me. Kind of hard to tell maybe if I'm shaking too much. But I've never seen anything do it like that before, but you can see it twitch and jump and move around. Pretty neat looking. I don't know if that's crystals forming and dissolving or what, but whatever it is, it looks really neat. So that is mostly, not exclusively, but mostly is calcium chloride and iron oxide hydroxide. Iron oxide and iron hydroxide. Now my theory, if it works out, is that I will try it, is I'm going to be able to try to dissolve the calcium chloride back out of this with isopropyl alcohol. And the reason being is that I'm going to try to separate the calcium chloride back out of the iron oxide without having to float up a whole bunch of the iron oxide. That's my theory. May not work, but if it does work, then I'll have at least a semi-efficient way of concentrating and pulling back my calcium chloride. Because once I've got the calcium, that thing had a couple gallons of mixture in it, and I've dried it all out. Again, what I'm going to do with these is once they dry totally out, I'm going to burn them, ash them out, and that'll give me back iron oxide and calcium oxide. They'll be mixed, unfortunately, to some extent, so that won't help in the short term, but I can then go ahead and process it further once it's hashed out, because it's kind of hard to filter out the iron stuff stuck to the egg shell membranes. I'll not be doing that again if I can avoid it, because I'm hoping what I'll do is I'll actually ash out my eggs. I'll burn them off and oxidize them completely, and then I'll keep trying my best to keep recycling the calcium as calcium chloride. That way, if nothing else, I've got a new product that I can deal with besides the iron oxide. But either way, if I can recycle the hydrogen chloride, that's kind of what I'm trying to set up for. There are other ways of getting hydrogen chloride affordably, such as electrolysis, and I'll try that too. But I'm just looking at all my options. Because I can get, to some extent, I can get hydrogen chloride and crud, my brain went dead. What am I thinking of? Well, I can get sodium chlorate and metallic sodium hydroxide out of which sodium hydroxide just recycles it back into table salt, which is really cheap. In other words, if I find calcium is too much of a product cost, then all I have to do is just keep cycling pure sodium chloride through its sodium hydroxide and hydrogen chloride, and just cycle it over and over again to keep getting the acid and alkali necessary to process this. But reason I wanted to use calcium if I could, well, because I've got a lot of it, you know. Again, all that all this clay slip here is, to get it, I had to leach calcium and magnesium out of it. So, when you look at these mounds I have of shale, I mean, the whole planet is pretty much loaded with calcium. You know, this stuff right here on the ground, that's just, it's got a lot of calcium in it. So I'd say, you know, my idea is if I can use that, then I can go ahead and, you know, get everything out of the same pile of materials. Then in theory that should help, because realistically all the red in red clay is iron too. Iron also, I should say. Iron 2. That could be iron 2, it could be iron 3 oxide. But and let me see, I think oh yeah, yesterday I hauled some of the iron ore up out of the road, about 100 pounds or so of it. So it went from about 500 pounds to 600 pounds here of iron in ore fashion. So it was there and easy to pick up off the surface, and it was being washed away by the rain, so I just felt like, you know, it wasn't going to stick around if it rained and washed away. So I went ahead and just gathered some up and took it in. Now, technically, it is still more economical for me to collect scrap metal from people than it is to collect ore. And it probably always will be, I don't know. So if this doesn't come through, but on the other hand, if it just pays for itself, you know, if I break even on it, then I'll be happy, really. So all I can say is, I mean, I work with iron and steel all the time. You see it everywhere. Loads and loads and loads of iron and steel. Not like I have a hard time getting a hold of it. You know, I may be poor, but iron is not one of the things I'm poor in. You know, I may be short on money, but I'm long on iron. I mean, not as much as a big factory or anything, but you know, that blue barrel's got a bunch of metal shavings down in the bottom of it, and other iron, and then there's metal chip in that lathe, and you know, I mean, it's not hard to come by. You know, I haul iron off all the time. But the other thing is, I might find copper, lead, zinc, or silver, or all the above, in which case it will most definitely pay for itself. But you know, as far as getting iron, you know, this stuff was free. You know, some of it's absolutely just rust, which is exactly what I'm processing into. Iron ore essentially is just rust. You know, well, that and iron sulfate. Sulfide, you know, pyrite. Pyrite and chalcopyrite both have iron in them. Of course, chalcopyrite also has copper, which makes it worth more. But I mean, you know, there's no shortage of it. All the scrap snarly wire that I can't, in fact, the wire's actually got zinc on it too, because, well, that's the galvanization. So I can get free zinc and free iron, pretty much, minus the price of gasoline to drive and get it. But I mean, it's not like I'm going to ever run short on sources of it. So it's not like, oh man, you know, you're just gonna be sitting over here twiddling your thumbs when you run out of scrap iron, or, you know, out of ore or whatever. It's like, no, it ain't gonna happen. The only thing I could run out of is aluminum. And the reason that matters, again, is because of the fact that I'm using the aluminum as a reactant, a fuel, if you will. This is fuel for that kind of reaction. And the other thing is, the value of this fuel is somewhat dependent on how it's processed. Normally when people powder up aluminum, they do it in a rather wasteful manner, because they do it in the presence of oxygen, and therefore there's an aluminum oxide surface. That's why it's so hard to light normal thermite. Not because the aluminum isn't reactive, it's because it's already partly reacted. It's already partly aluminum oxide, and that doesn't want to burn, and it's all over the surface of all their particles. So the trick is, you've got to particulate your aluminum in an oxygen-free atmosphere. And I realize that that takes a little extra work, but it's really worth it. I've had people say, oh, don't do that, it's too dangerous. It's only as dangerous as how you handle it. There are plenty of ways to handle superfine aluminum powder when it has an open, exposed surface area. And the number one is, you keep it in an inert gas. You process it, you mill it in inert gas, and you leave it in inert gas until you've initiated the reaction itself. In fact, technically, if you have aluminum powder that doesn't have an oxide surface, you can literally ignite it by dropping liquid oxygen or concentrated hydrogen peroxide on it. You don't need a match, you don't need a sparkler or anything. If you have surface area on the aluminum that is at that exact instant not oxidized, and you drop liquid oxygen or concentrated, which of course I don't have any liquid oxygen, and I don't have any cryogenic thing to store that yet, although I do have a cryogenic freezer, just isn't working. I could liquefy my own oxygen in theory if I get my cryo freezer running. But either way, and besides, just getting liquid oxygen for that wouldn't be worth it, but I've got other things I could use liquid oxygen on. And technically, when you're done, you have a better burn. The only thing is, you don't want to add too much oxygen to a thermite reaction, because not only do you have a runaway reaction, but you can end up with waste metal, and because you can end up with, the idea is supposed to be that the aluminum takes the oxygen from the metal around it, iron, the nickel, the cobalt, or whatever else is in your mixture, your alloy. But so yeah, I've rambled on. That's it for now.